Well, I'm starting to hear some rumblings under the surface that some more mainstream people are finally starting to worry about inflation as a result of the Fed's actions. But you know what? I'm not going to talk about that today because that's stuff that's going to be a problem in a few months, a little bit down the road. I think that my outlook on the economy has been negative for a long time, and so that can wait. So what I am going to talk about today, however, is this big rally, this big Stop the Steal rally in, I believe it was in Atlanta, Georgia, today. It was featuring Lynnwood and Sidney Powell. And as anyone who follows this channel knows, I've been skeptical and somewhat critical of the exploits of particularly Sidney Powell, because she's been the more public one, but I mean, Lynnwood is in that same sort of group. And it's not so much that I have any contempt for them as people or anything. It's just that I felt that their legal challenges were not going after the low-hanging fruit, which to me, was the easiest thing to do. I think that you back yourself into a corner when you try and make claims that are harder to prove, and that you should just focus on winning the easy stuff, which could very easily overturn the election. Signature matches, the observers, which I talked about with Michigan. The whole Michigan election should be completely invalidated just simply based on the lack of observation in Wayne County and the way that observers were denied the rights under the law. But with all that said, Sidney Powell and Lynnwood represent a lot of people in this country in spirit. There's much of the Trump base, of which I'm not a part of. Obviously, I'm more of a spectator when it comes to this stuff. But I have enough sense to try and gauge how different parts of this country are feeling, and the Trump base resonates a lot with the message of Sidney Powell and Lynnwood. And I think there's clear evidence of that today. If you look at not only the amount of people who attended this rally that they held in Georgia, but also how much of an online viewership it got. I mean, it was similar to a Trump rally. And so that makes me think that a lot of your people who would normally watch a Trump rally on YouTube are tuning into this Sidney Powell and Lynnwood rally. It is, they're retaining a lot of Trump's audience. And Lynnwood, I have to say, is a very compelling speaker. Politically speaking, I think that he would have great success if he, for example, tried to run in a primary against Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia. And I think his message today was respectable. It is something I respect. He, like Ollie Alexander, who was staying behind him at the rally, and who has been saying for the past few weeks that, hey, the Georgia Republican establishment needs to step up, especially Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. And if they decide that they're not going to do that, well, then people need to not give them their vote, because they're not entitled to the vote of the people of Georgia, and they need to earn it, essentially. Well, it's really a twofold thing. And I talked about this before. One, you need to earn our vote. You need to do what we're asking. We're asking you to make sure that the November election was legitimate, and that there was no funny business. And if there was, root it out, investigate it, and do what needs to be done, whether that's not certifying the electors or what have you. But then the second part of that is that, hey, if they stole the election from Trump and from you, in November, because if Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue had gotten over 50% of the vote on election day, this would not be going to a runoff. They're only in a runoff because they both got under 50%. And so the attitude of these people is like, well, if they stole the election, in November, why would they not steal it in January? What's the point in voting if nobody's going to try and stand up and root out any of these problems that these people see with the electoral process in Georgia? And, I'm someone who is unaware of how influential Ollie Alexander was on the ground, how popular that idea was, although I certainly had an inkling that there were a lot of people who organically felt that way, without being told so by him. But when I saw this rally today, the amount of the audience that it garnered, And when Lynnwood was making this case up there, saying, hey, you shouldn't vote for any of these people. They're dead to me. They should be dead to you. They don't stand up for us. That to me made it clear that not only is Brian Kemp not going to be the governor of Georgia after after 2022, when he inevitably loses re-election, whether he's primaried or loses to Stacey Abrams in the general, but I think it's pretty clear that Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue are going to hemorrhage a significant chunk of their votes from the November election. Now the question is, will that be enough to cost them the election? That's something I simply do not know. But my gut tells me that they both will probably lose at this point because they're doing absolutely nothing to rally their base. They're doing quite the opposite. They're agitating their base against them. They're firing up their own people to stay home. That is the effect of what Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue are doing right now. And of course, there's also the contemptible Brad Raffensperger and Gabriel Sterling. And so in the short run, I think that the effects of this is that Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue lose. The Democrats take back the Senate, assuming that they don't do anything, assuming that they stand this course. Now, the Republican blue checks are very upset, saying that how dare you peons, you little Republican voters in Georgia, not vote for our two beloved Republican establishment Senate candidates who sit up there like a couple of dead fish and don't do anything except insider trade, and they don't do anything to fight for you. How dare you not vote for them? It must mean that you're working for Nancy Pelosi. The Republicans, as always, when they are in trouble, when they lose, they never look inward at themselves and say, gee, I must not have earned the votes of enough people. They say, damn those voters, they didn't vote for me. It's their fault. How dare they? And when you start castigating your own base for not supporting you, that you're kind of in the final stages of your power. Now, I don't think that the blue check Republican class on Twitter is going to necessarily be swept under the rug that easily. Although a lot of them were done away with after 2016. I think that something similar is going to happen in 2022, regardless of what happens going forward here with the election contests. I think that by 2022, the vast majority of Republicans will be sufficiently convinced that this election was stolen. They will be disgusted with their own representatives, and in many of these states, their own leaders, and they will demand someone to replace them. There will be primary challengers who step forward, and they will win. And so 2022 is going to be a lot like 2010. You're going to have sort of a Tea Party 2.0 kind of situation. Of course, it won't be the same as the Tea Party. These are different matters, but it's essentially stemming from the same thing. I can tell the energy is there. It feels very similar to me to the lead up to 2010, the absolute disgust with the Republican establishment and their fecklessness. I mean, the Republican voters, there was never a period where they decided that they all of a sudden liked, John McCain and Mitch McConnell and all these other people. It's just a matter of how pronounced their disgust was, whether they could tolerate these people or not. And over the past few years, particularly under Donald Trump, the Republican establishment became more tolerable to the Republican base because the Republican establishment generally, those of them who stuck around and didn't leave the party, they generally tolerated Trump and would regurgitate pro-Trump talking points, and that was enough for most voters. But seeing something so blatant here, it's bringing a lot of people back to 2008 with the bailouts and the McCain campaign, which nobody I knew liked John McCain in 2008. People, the anti-establishment hatred for the Republican, for Republicans, it's reaching a fever pitch once again. Now, Lynnwood would go even further than what I'm saying. He's saying that not that we're approaching 2010. He's saying that this is 1776. I don't think I go that far. I don't think that there's going to be a revolution over Trump losing. But the seeds certainly are being sown. I think that that's for certain. And it's very disconcerting how few people have enough of an informed perspective to really see what's going on. It's frightening. I guess for most people, it would be much more startling than it is for me, because I'm someone who lost respect for our leaders a long time ago. I've never thought that they've had our best interests at heart or anything like that, or that they know what they're doing, or you remember that old nonsense BS line about the Wikileaks when they first came out, and they were leaking stuff about the Iraq War. And people were the national security state was just furious and saying, no, you gotta keep those things secret, because there are certain things that just the American people can't know, because we have to keep them safe. After 9/11, a lot of us, vast majority of Americans bought into that lie. And what we learned from the Wikileaks thing, we actually watched the tape, which they told people, hey, if you're a patriotic American, don't watch the tape. Don't give them any airtime, which was smart, because it made a lot of people not watch the tape, like my mother's, like that, for example. She still thinks Julian Assange is an evil traitor, even though he's not even American. You can't betray a country that you've never even visited. Or he might have visited here, but he's never lived here, and he's not a U.S. citizen. He's Australian, but that's beside the point. Once you see the kinds of crap that they're hiding from us, and you realize that, they're not hiding this stuff to keep us safe. They're hiding the stuff to keep themselves safe from us. And then you realize that these people are not that smart. They're not super geniuses who are keeping things going. Our leaders, for the most part, are bumbling idiots who are just sort of riding on the inertia of their predecessors. And so nobody really in a position of power or of influence, is watching what's going on, seeing our society go over the cliff, seeing the breakdown in social cohesion, and doing anything about it. I mean, we still, at this point, are bickering over partisan nonsense, and there's nobody really, and that's okay by me, because I think, balkanization ultimately would be a good thing. I think that the more divided Americans get, the more pressure there will be towards decentralization rather than pressure towards centralization. There will be more resistance to the centralization of power as people become more and more divided, because they will not want to surrender any of their local powers to Washington or give up their rights. But I think about my enemies, about your deep state folks, about the political establishment, about, frankly, most people, your sort of your civic nationalists type people. The people who believe the kind of garbage that Joe Biden spews in his speeches about we're not red America or blue America, we're the United States of America, plagiarizing Obama's speech. The people who buy into this crap should be the ones at the forefront, trying to diffuse all this tension, trying to reassure all of these people who have lost faith in the system, trying to do everything they can to ensure the integrity of our elections. And instead, everyone seems to be doing quite the opposite. At least all those who you would expect to do just that, the people who you would think at some level honestly want, America to be, strong and united or whatever. But really, if this, one of the many lessons of this election is that those people just don't exist anymore. There is nobody like a Richard Nixon in 1960 who, even though he knew the election was stolen from him, didn't want to bring it up too loudly, lest he divide the country and create any sort of domestic strife. No, I don't think that was the correct thing. What the correct thing should have been done was that Nixon, voiced those concerns, brought forward the evidence, presented the evidence, and then the Kennedy folks should have, said, hey, we want to make sure everything was on the up and up too. And if there are legitimate concerns, we want, the losing side, the Nixon campaign and the Republicans to feel completely reassured that everything was fair. And if it turns out that there was something that was, not fair, some aspect of our election that was not done properly, well then, we'll go from there. I mean, those are the sorts of things that have to be done for people to take the system seriously, for people to have trust in the system. And hardly anyone, whether they are Republicans or Democrats, want that. Of course, none of the Democrats want it, and the Republican leadership doesn't want it either. But the people I saw today cheering, lock him up, referring to Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia, they're serious. These people are not going to just go away into the night. It's not like January 20th, Biden gets sworn in, and then everything goes back to normal, as the neoliberals hope it will. The next 4 years are going to be more chaotic than the last 4 years. I think that's a fairly safe prediction at this point. Honestly, if the coming administration, particularly after Kamala Harris assumes power as someone who was the vice president, of a president who retired, who was himself not fairly elected, you're going to see a serious nullification crisis, if not an outright attempt at secession, if Kamala Harris oversteps her bounds and actually tries to get something done. Because remember what I've said, with all this stuff going on, Joe Biden is going to be an incredibly weak president. Kamala Harris even more so, because if she just comes to power as the vice president, I mean, nobody even voted for her to be president, let alone actually electing her to be president. The backlash in a state like Georgia is going to be almighty. There is going to be a very serious primary challenge to Brian Kemp, for example. He's going to lose, and the person who replaces him is going to be a firebrand, no doubt. I mean, frankly, I would be surprised if it was one of the guys on the stage today, whether it was Vernon Jones or Lynnwood. From what I saw, however, Lynnwood has a much better speaking ability than Vernon Jones, but I mean, I think they're both very popular amongst Georgia Republican voters as of right now. I think the attitude amongst the Republican establishment is that by complaining about how the election was stolen from Trump right now, you're going to burn your bridges and look stupid once Biden is in office, and so, you're better off just keeping your mouth shut and dealing with the new administration because, if you were one of these people defending Trump, you'll have no credibility next year after Biden becomes the president. That's how they're looking at it, and it's quite the opposite. Amongst Republican voters, if you're not defending Trump now, when the election was obviously stolen from him, and again, I say that as someone who's by no means a Trump zealot, did not vote for him in 2016, I've not supported him over the last 4 years, been very critical, but the facts are the facts. If one side cheats, it's not fair. And so half of the country is going to be very, very bitter moving forward over this whole situation. The implications are far-reaching. It's not just going to be after, to 2022 and then we're done. This is not going away. And the reason for that, as I've said, is that nothing is being done to assuage these people's fears. There is no proposed election reform or anything like that. Nobody's even acknowledging that there's a problem. So with that said, if you get anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.